Yeah, obviously, because of the
That's fine.
time
No
difference. Yeah,
worries.
sorry about that. Yeah, so we'll do it quickly. Don't worry. I'll take your time. Okay. Okay. Yeah, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ready when you are.
All right. Right. Thanks, James. So, hello everyone. Welcome to my session, How Open Source Changed My Life. I'm Kamal. I'm a Google developer expert in Flutter and Dart. I'm a YouTuber and a mentor. Well, I don't want to say this session is going to be like the usual talk, endorsing about a technology, a tool, or a product. It's going to be something very different, where the session is all about to emphasize the importance of open source, how people, businesses are adopting open source and choosing one actually changed my life, and the perception about building a sustainable product. So that's what I'm going to discuss and let you know that you could also try adopting one. There is a saying, managed right way or managing projects, um, open source requires different demands on management and leadership. Now, I think that when if you manage things in a right way, open source can deliver a industrial strength system that meets user and provides solutions that are fully extendable, maintainable over a long period of time. Now, by doing this, what exactly are we trying to achieve? It's more consistent and easier to maintain. So now before going to open source, the importance or the journey, so first let's explore before open source what was that was kind of occupying the market. I would say an enterprise project or a closed project. In fact, there are loads of them. And when you take something, any technology or a project or a framework or architecture, everything has its own pros and cons. Now, in fact, closed projects or enterprise projects had a lot of pros, but at the same time, it had few disadvantage as well. Now, if you see that they have the strict guidelines, like saying everything organized in a customization was not that flexible or that not leverage. So it was in a very organized way of dealing things. They used to follow a design document, then creating and then testing. And this enterprise ecosystem is like they try to avoid risk for at the maximum possibility, so it has to go through approvals, rules, protocols. So this kind of hierarchy was followed, and finally the information was always secured. There was less exposure of information. But there are certain good things also. You had a good support system, 24 bar 7 anytime, user friendliness, unified experience. So yeah, so well, I have been in this industry for a decade and I've tried these things. It worked for a long time. Yeah, it really works fine. But then I still had that emptiness and I felt that constrained. Okay, I'm lacking something. Kind of stuck here. There is no flexibility or there is no option to modify any feature. The licensing is always a kind of a issue, or the pricing sometimes that makes me feel not to use this and look for something else. So this was kind of pulling me back. So that's when I really thought, okay, why not try my hands dirty to get these open source, or what is it all about? So I started doing some research and started to see what are available ones, and that's when I came up with this. So, whenever I try to learn a new technology or go deep into it, I try to find the history of it. So, open source is not something which was just found overnight or it's been there for like past 2 years. It started way back in 1950s. That's what the research says, and it is the reality. So, in 1950 or 1960, we had the software and compilers which were delivered as a part of hardware purchase without separate fees. So there itself, open source started. And in 1970, we had the uh, unbundling of software from hardware, IBM. And then in 1980, we had the GNU project by Richard. And there was also from the University of California, Berkeley, who were working for the BSD Unix system. And then going back to 1990, we had Linux. You know, the Linus, the student of the computer science, was implementing the first version of Linux kernel, and Mozilla was founded. Open source initiatives were started, licensing. They also started building free operating systems. And they also started using the GPL licensing for if your project has to be open source. And in 2007, we had almost 7,800 contributors from 800 companies, and the patches that was taking place was 6 patches per hour. So you can understand the severity of open source during those days. And then we had Apache, which was developed and maintained by an open community of developers, MySQL, which is one of the most popular open source database. Then we had the PHP, which was the base language for web development. And we had almost installed 2004, I would not say 2000, sorry, 250 million websites and 2.1 million web servers. And then we had WordPress, we had VLC Player, we had Notepad++. You think about all the software that you use on a day-to-day basis, everything seems to be like on the basis of open source community. And then Android, now recently Flutter, React, and the list keeps going on. So this actually comes back to this another question, like the survey in 2020, which states that the organizations are almost adopting open source. So it says that 44% of the organization uses open source as a rescue option. Why is the sudden rise? And they also say that 48% cited the increase in efficiency of application development maintenance as the reason for embracing open source. And they're also shifting to open source. They're using tools, they're using software. And in fact, a lot of companies are even adding open source contribution as a policy governing when you're hiring an employee. Initially, a decade back, when people used to hire, they used to look for skills. Are you good at Java? Do you have experience? But these days, they ask, have you worked on those open source libraries? Do you have experience? Can I get your GitHub link? Any open source projects that you have done? Any community contribution? So the trend is completely changing. Now, it's not happening overnight, it's because of so many softwares that are available and they are making a huge impact in the market. That's when these changes are happening. So I think it's time to rethink about these things. Now, if you ask me what is this open source all about, it is all about letting out your creativity, allowing us to perform or tweak any changes, and building a community, which I think which lacks in a closed system. At the end, open source revolve around these three things. And that's what makes it really stand out in the market. When I say open source, the first thing everybody talks about is it's free. I wouldn't say free, it's about the pricing, but definitely pricing is also a factor. But I would say free here is freedom for me to use this product as per my modification. And if I want to build a feature on it, that kind of leverage it gives me. That is what open source or free, what I mean by. So people get this wrong notion of free product or free in terms of price. So what are the features that really makes an open source stand out? To get a little more in detail, I would say adaptability, where most of the IT leaders must fundamentally provide the flexibility and the agility for their enterprise. If you can't compete on the agility, you're going to be left behind by the competition. So typically offering multiple ways to solve problems. So that is what open source is all about. Ability to start small. With open source, you can start something very small. Quickly with the community version, you can then migrate to a commercially supported version as a business requirements drives you there. Also attract better talent. You know, open source gives you enterprises the ability to attract better talent. Most of the professions are well aware of open source, and many believe it's where industry is headed. Community, trust me, without community, open source is a kind of, it falls back for me. Because at the end of the day, when you make something open source, that means you want the entire community to contribute. And if a product or a technology is flourishing in a market, it's, yes, definitely is because of the technology which started, but it's or the driving force here is the community, which keeps updating issues, fixing bugs, getting releases happening, documentation, clean code. So that's where community really plays a major role in it. So until now we have seen, okay, what was the history of open source, what are the little importance of open source and all. Now how is my journey connected to it? So I've been working in IT industry for more than a decade. I initially started like with web, with a lot of enterprise billion-dollar companies, with different zones, everything. And then I moved on to the mobile. But at the end, you know what? I come back to the community, because the technology can keep on changing. Today I might have X, tomorrow I might have Y. But if everything is changing open source, I think community plays an important role. And that's where I'm kind of working on it, to build a better community to get any technology into the market and delight your customer. Now, if I have to talk about all the technologies or all the languages, there are tons of them. So you think about Java, Python, Ruby, and the list keeps on going, and Flutter. So it's not about the technology, it's about how you make this technology worth, get into the market, delight your customer, and make it open source and a valuable product. That is what open source is all about. Okay, so you might say, Kamal, you know what? I understood what's open source. I know what are the technology available. Now, where do I start? Like, so if you're already into the industry, you know a bit of it, but definitely it would be a kind of refreshment. But if you're new and you've never contributed, or you would like to excel in this field, or you would like to um, dedicate yourself to this or work on it, definitely find out the most, do a research. Basically, I would say first understand where you want to start. Do some research in finding out the most popular language in GitHub. Every day, I mean weekly ones or monthly ones, you have a report generated by GitHub giving you a research detail as to which language has been forked, starred, or contributed more. So do those kind of analysis. Then I would say find the type of project. Now, when I say type of project, it's not the language that you're comfortable with it. I'm talking about whether are you interested in a security project or a virtual reality text editor or something like a CSS preprocessor. So choose a topic that interests you, and also look for the volume. The reason I'm saying is that, say, for example, if you take a VLC media player, definitely it's going to be 1,000 to million lines of code. And I wouldn't say this is a best choice for someone who's going to begin with, because they've already set a standard for it and you have major contributions happening and a more advanced level. So always look for labels like first time, only, beginner, easy to start up with. Then you can move on to these higher volume projects. Okay, so I understood where to start from. Then what are the things are required to do it? Simply, I would say just understand GitHub in and out of it, and then understand your community. As I mentioned, technology will keep on changing, but GitHub or the version control tool is something which you have to master, because if you need to understand the basic pull, merge, issues, forking, documentation, where to find, because if you're working on a huge projects, making mistakes really doesn't appeal to the client or any other person who's actually working on it. So make yourself comfortable with GitHub and understand your community. So you can join any of the open source projects by subscribing to the newsletters, mailing list, find the official websites, and get it accepted, and then start communicating with the team and get support if necessary. So I would say language differs, varies, but these two things is something that you have to master, and I think it's a required skill. So what all I can do as an open source contributors? Definitely you can do feature request, you can fix bugs, you can do pull request, um, documentation. If you're really good at writing technical articles or narrating things, why don't you work on documentation? Trust me, when I work on an open source project, I have seen projects where the documentations are really bad, and there are excellent documentations as well. So whenever there's a person coming to look or work into your project, If the documentation is very narrative, clean, precise, he would really love to contribute and he won't be stuck. The moment someone tries your project itself, in the beginning itself, he doesn't know where to start and he kinds of gets stuck, errors. Do you think he would have an interest to continue with it? Definitely not. So, documentation also plays a very important role. And then you have clean code. Clean code, I'm not talking about removing a comment or making your clean pretty. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if you have unnecessary variables defined or if you have functions which are kind of repetitive and you can kind of avoid them, make it more efficient, then definitely that is what I mean by clean code. So you know where to start, what to do, which language to know. And next is like, how do I start or how do I know it's the right time for me to create an open source? So I would say that if you feel that existing project on GitHub or Bitbucket, these are the version controls available. If you see that there is an offer for a functionality that is not available, and if you would like to build, then create your own open source solution. But hold on, if you say you're going to create your own open source solution, then I would say you need to answer these four questions. The first one being, do you have the right skill to start this project? Because there are tons of languages in the market, so you don't know which language to contribute. How much time will you be spending on this project? What problems are you going to solve? Is it the designer problem, or is it a feature, or is it a bug that you're going to solve, or is it a new feature? What kind of problem are you going to solve? And then finally understand how many potential users are going to be using this product. So if you have these basic questions answered, then you would be in a better position to work on it. So do not randomly jump into open source project by forking the project, pull request, clone it, and then start working on it. I would say just give some time, do an analysis, see if it's your kind of a project, then start working on it. And also there are many companies which kind of use these projects on free tools. When there's a huge selection of a software, say for example there's this notepad and everybody's kind of using this, but it is pricey and it is a licensed version. What if you can come up with your own open source which is free to use? Definitely you would have million people using your open source project. And this is how open source projects are created in history here. So we have seen all this and how my journey ended up here in Flutter, or how my journey with Flutter started with this open source is what I'm going to talk about. So I think Ashita would have already explained about Flutter and the kind of amazing work she's done on Flutter for Gem. So just to give you a very brief introduction, Flutter is this Google's UI toolkit for building beautiful native compiled applications for mobile, web, desktop from a single code base. Let me repeat that, from a single code base is something that really made me not to turn back again. I said, that's it, I'm not turning back. And I'm glad to announce that yesterday we had Flutter 2 version released. So you won't believe that we have the same code base to ship the native apps to the 5 different operating system: iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, Linux, as well as the web experience, which is in the stable state now, where you can target browsers like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and Edge. And also, Flutter can be embedded in cars, TVs, smart home appliances, providing the best and the most pervasive and portable experience for the ambient computing world. So, this is the gist of Flutter. So, if you haven't tried Flutter, please do give it a try. It's open source, it's free, and you have different ways of contributing, and you have different operating system being supported. And give it a try and see how it works. I think Ashita already explained about pub.dev and the uh, visual explanation of your packages on Flutter Gem. So this, why I try to explain or bring this part here is, this is entirely being contributed by community. So you do not have this anywhere licensed or closed or code not available. You can find any package, click on it, you can find the entire source code of this package. And if you want to, in fact, you can clone the package, work on it, modify, you can update, you can fix the bugs, or you can create your own package. So that's how the community is fully open sourced, and it's built by community for the community. And it's going absolutely fine. Now, when I say community, it's just not that packages or fixing bugs or documentation. These kind of visual treats are also being created by user. Now, I find a library and I'm creating these kind of UI. So this is purely done by the community for the community. So you can see the kind of intricate designs people are using. These are the tools, um, and kind of animations are being done using Flutter. So this is all purely Flutter. And this, yeah, this, okay, let me, okay. This is also another example and use case created by the Flutter team. It's a very simple one. It's available again on flutter.dart, which is a Dart pad, which is an online editor. So if you look at it, it's a very simple disk or squares or colors. But at the end of the day, the kind of creativity that you can get out of it with just few lines of code, you can get this done. So this is also created by another developer like you and me, just using or understanding few basics of Dart. And so here are a couple of other examples, packages which are being used. So you can see that if I have to build a navigation bar or a menu item, I don't have to build something from the scratch or reinvent this wheel. There are already packages available, just start using them and you're good to go. So most, I would say 99% are Flutter community related packages contributed by the community itself. So community is not only about the SDK, the technology, it's all about the other part of the community also, where you have Twitter, you have GitHub, you have YouTube, you have Meetup, Stack Overflow, Reddit, Discord, Slack. All this combines itself is what makes a community stand out in the market. If you see Flutter growing up or rising in just 2 years of span to such a high rated programming language on GitHub, it's not easy. And this is all possible only because of the community. So if you're looking to start something, make sure that you have all this mediums available and get your technology kind of updated here. And you can check out all the content of Flutter on all these channels as well. And lastly, not to mention that since there is another group called Flutterista, which is actually kind of people who identify as a woman or a non-binary in Flutter. This is done by two amazing people, Daniel and Stephanie. So here we have monthly sync up where we talk about Flutter projects. We discuss about Flutter issues or jobs or newsletters, anything related to Flutter or any project that you're working or any interesting features. And we also have on March 27th this month, we have a Flutterista conference, which is being run on all the time zone around the world. So if you'd like to get an invite or you would like to join this channel, please reach out to me. I will get you connected with them and you can join this channel. And we also have something called Hump Day Q&A, which happens every week, where all around the world, all the Flutter developers get connected. And you also have Google employees or developers talking in the or taking part in the meetup where they talk about few issues and discuss about them. So if you need an invite to this, just let me know. And yeah, I think that's it. So it's just not that I think and I've experienced it that open source is all about the future, whether it could be web, mobile solution. It's predominantly taking place in the open source infrastructure. Open source is a good investment in future. That is what I believe in. And the future architecture are all based on open source. So what is stopping you? Give it a try and see what wonders you can create out of it. And you can reach me on all these channels if you have any questions or you want to join any of the community or you want to know more about Flutter, definitely reach out to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kamal. That was very interesting. And feel free to send me an email with the invitation. I can promote the events on our newsletter if you want. So yeah, if you want, you can send me an email with the invitation to the event, and I'll promote it. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the timetable. I didn't think about the timing. Yeah.
That's absolutely fine, Jay. It's all about community, so I'm happy and glad to be a part of it. Thank you so
That's
much for inviting
fantastic.
me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you, obviously. And as always, Tech Italia is an open community, so feel free to get in touch, propose new ideas, propose the speakers. So thanks again to all the speakers and all the participants who came in, went out, and yeah, you'll receive an email in a few days with all the links you need to the presentations and contact details of each speaker. So thanks again, Kamal. Thanks again. I don't know who's left in the room, but I think everyone has gone to sleep or to eat as we're running quite late. But thank you again, Kamal. That was very interesting. Okay, so you'll get the link to your presentation in a few days. Thank you to everyone, and thank you, Raphaeline. Thanks again, and have a nice night, have a nice evening, have a nice afternoon, depending on where you are in the globe. And I hope to see you soon. Thanks again.